deep-fried cicadas, Cicadapalooza, and a sex-crazed zombie virus. This week, it's all about cicadas.
Traveling the world to bring you delicious dishes, tasty beverages, and interesting experiences. This is the Destination Eat Drink Podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
I'm Brent Peterson. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink, the travel podcast for foodies. Here at Destination Eat Drink, we explore food and travel, two of the great joys of life. And this week, it's something different as we talk cicadas with Monica Eng of Axois. But first, do me a favor, rate and review Destination Eat Drink on your podcast app. It just takes a minute, and it helps more people find the show. And if you're so inclined, support Destination Eat Drink with a one-time or recurring contribution at buymeacoffee.com/Destination Eat Drink, and thank you very, very much. Monica Eng is an award-winning Chicago-based journalist who has worked for the Chicago Sun-Times, the Chicago Tribune, WBEZ Radio, and now for Axois. And Monica was on Destination Eat Drink last year talking about her great foodie book, Made in Chicago, Stories Behind 30 Great Hometown Bites, with her co-author David Hammond. Monica recently published several stories on Axois about the Midwest cicada emergence, and she tells me about foraging cicadas in a forest preserve, storing cicadas in a yogurt container, and preparing and eating cicadas. That conversation naturally leads to other insect talk, like pairing tarantula legs with wine and eating earthworms. But it's not all bug talk. Monica also tells me about South Carolina barbecue, rhubarbs and strawberries, bitter melon, and movies on rooftops. Okay, I'm starving, so let's eat.
Destination Eat Drink.
Monica Eng, welcome back to Destination Eat Drink. We're going to talk insects today.
Yes, thanks so much.
You know, cicadas are really in the news right now. I think everyone knows what cicadas are, these little insects that cause such a ruckus with all their mating noises. But why are cicadas at the top of everyone's mind? Why is everyone talking about cicadas this particular year?
Well, we've got a dual emergence happening in parts of the Midwest and the South. And so some areas like Chicago are going to get these 17-year cicadas, and others are going to get 13-year. And then other areas are going to get both of them at the same time. So it's kind of a rare event when many communities will be deluged with these insects that last for about 4 weeks, but can be very intense.
I've been reading some articles, I've been watching some videos, and I see a lot of people, especially on news programs, refer to it as the Cicadapocalypse. But I was reading one of your articles in Axois. I'm pretty sure it was one of yours, Monica. And you use the term Cicadapalooza, which I love so much more than Cicadapocalypse. Did you coin Cicadapalooza?
I probably didn't, but I thought of it off the top of my head. I mean, it's basically just everybody going nuts for this. And I think it implies more of a celebration than sort of doomsday, because as many scientists tell us, it's actually very good for the environment, and it's a sign of a healthy environment.
Yeah, and these cicadas, they're actually beneficial to the trees. You know, a lot of people think, they're gonna suck all the sap out and they're gonna kill these trees, but you know, where they live in the ground by the trees, and what they do with them is actually a sign of a healthy environment, like you said. So I like it. Celebrate cicadas. Don't think it's the end of the world. It's not one of the signs of the apocalypse.
Yeah, I mean, they aerate the soil, and then they trim off dead branches on the ends of the branches. And I mean, you can sit there and use a tiller and try to aerate the soil, or you can have these guys create these little tunnels in the soil around the trees, which are always healthier when scientists look at them after a cicada year.
It's so interesting that you say that, because I'm a truffle guy. I actually wrote my novel was about truffles, and one of the things about truffles is that a lot of times human intervention, the same way with tree roots, when humans are looking for truffles, are damaging to the roots. And if you're tilling the soil by a tree, you can also damage the roots. So this is just another example of nature already having figured it out and human intervention tending not to do as good of a job.
Exactly.
The other phrase that I wanted to bring up besides Cicadapalooza was another one that I've seen in a lot of articles, and that's with the cicada sex-crazed zombie virus. What is the sex-crazed zombie virus of cicadas?
Well, it's this virus, this fungal-based virus that seems to be affecting about 10% of this year's brood. And it makes male cicadas sort of act in ways that normally female cicadas would. So the male cicadas climb as high as they can, they sing, 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 and then females will flap their wings and say, okay, I'm ready to respond to your song and to mate. And then a male will fly over to them and have sex with them. But in this case, it's a male attracting other males. They have, I guess, sex. They mush together. And then at that point, the infected male infects the other guy and rips off his genitals. And the other guy flies away with this fungus on them without his genitals. And then he gets it and he can pass it on to anyone else he sees. So they believe I mean, we've found infected, cicadas here in Chicago already. And, some people, they say sex crazed because, that's what they're here for. They're 4 weeks. Their job is climb as high as you can, attract a mate, breed. Females lay those eggs, and then the whole thing waits again for another 13 to 17 years. They lay the eggs, the nymphs drop to the ground, they tunnel under and hang out for 17 years and then come back up. So the zombie part is that they've got a disease that they're spreading and they need to find people to spread it to.
Mm-hmm. Do they think this will have a significant impact on the cicada population?
So far, it's about 10%. And because there are millions, I mean, the cicadas, they produce in these huge numbers because they know that only a small percentage are going to make it up to that top of the tree to mate and lay eggs. And the rest are going to be eaten by dogs or foxes or people. And I guess we'll get to that in a moment. Or they'll get crushed, in the areas where they are. It's just impossible not to step on them. And, 10% could be affected by this disease. But we think it's not going to hurt the populations that much.
So, what's your backyard like?
You know what? I have been waiting. I've been writing about this and I've been waiting and almost, bracing myself for it. There are a bunch of trees in my neighborhood that have these nets over them. The New York Times just wrote about it saying trees in Chicago look like ghosts with these white nets, but not a single cicada. I got excited and I saw something on the ground. I was like, oh, look at that. The cicadas are here. It was just a beetle. I guess this 17-year brood just must not have laid eggs here 17 years ago. But you go a couple miles west and people say, oh my gosh, I cannot eat my breakfast in peace because they are so loud. And my dog is, eating like dozens of them a day. And some people in some of our suburbs say on my side of the street, nothing. On the sunnier other side of the street, they are all over the place. So it is so regionalized, but in parts of Chicago and definitely our suburbs, they are everywhere. My brother's house is covered.
Yeah, I think our mutual friend, Rick Kempfer, who lives out in Mount Prospect, he said his house his backyard is inundated with them. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I'm a little jealous, but almost sort of like, no, I think it would get old after one day.
Yeah, probably. So let's talk about this eating of cicadas. I guess we got to start with the foraging of them. You talked about in some places they're everywhere. So I guess that part's not too difficult, the finding them, the foraging them, assuming that your neighborhood has them and you want to eat them. They're relatively easy to find, right?
Yeah. So because I was doing it for a live show, I was like, oh no, the cicadas have not shown up anywhere. What am I going to do? I got to have some food to do a cooking demonstration. So a nature specialist, a forager actually said, go to the woods, check under logs, and you might find nymphs who are just waiting for it to get a little warmer. And indeed, right off the bat, I found 6 young white nymphs who had not grown out their wings yet and did not have a hard shell. And I said, sorry guys, but I'm going to collect you. I put them in a little yogurt container. I brought them home. I washed them in a colander, put them back in a clean yogurt container, put them in the freezer, said thank you and good night. The next morning, they were no longer with us. And, they were with us, but,
they were dead.
They were not alive. Yes. I tossed them. And then I wrote to this scientist who'd been quoted in all of these sex crazed zombie articles. And I said, my daughter's really concerned that if I eat these, that I'm going to turn into a sex crazed zombie. Can you please help me out here? And he's like, look, if you just eat a few and if you cook them very well, I don't really see any danger. The biggest danger is that for some reason, this fungus creates an amphetamine-like effect. So he said, I don't think you'll even feel the amphetamine-like effect. It's so small. So I boiled them like crazy. And then I brought them to the cooking demonstration where we dunked them in a pancake batter and then deep fried them and then served them on grape leaves. But there are many applications, and you're seeing many people in Chicago go on talk shows and things like that. Deep fried cicada nori, cicada tamales. They're actually an excellent source of protein, and insect eating is done in most parts of the world as a sustainable and fairly high quality source of protein.
I want to go back to something that you said that I found very interesting. So when you collected these cicadas, Monica, you said you put them in a yogurt container, took them home, and put them in the fridge or the freezer or whatever. Did you tell your family? Because I would be concerned that I would be the one who would grab the yogurt container and be like, "Oh my God!"
Well, I posted online. I did put masking tape because at first my family was like, "I don't want to see those." I had one of those clear ones, and then I put up masking tape. Cicadas for the live show. Do not eat them. And my family was, and people were like, "Did you really need to say do not eat them?"
Right.
Because they're not appetizing looking. And I should note that these sort of white tender ones are the ideal. And when they come out of the ground, they're kind of brown, and then they start climbing up the tree. And as they climb up the tree, often they cut a hole. And basically, if you can think of like you're wearing, a giant sweater that's over your head, but then you cut a hole in the neck and the back, and you say, I'm just going to slip out of this hole. I'm going to pull myself out of this hole in the back of my neck of the sweater. That's what they do. And then they emerge red-eyed and white. And those who like to eat them say that is the perfect moment. They're almost like a shrimp or a lobster tail at that moment because they haven't developed that hard shell again. They're still in this very kind of, vulnerable and soft stage. In 90 minutes, they will have redeveloped that hard shell. And that would be the next moment to harvest them if you don't get them before they leave the underground.
Get your cicadas while they're ripe.
Yes.
How did you end up preparing these particular cicadas, Monica?
It was a foolproof, dunk them in pancake batter, then drop them in the deep fryer. Pretty much anything will taste like deep fried breading if you do that. And that's what we did. And in Chicago, we have something called mild sauce. And I had the bottle of mild sauce ready to go. And that's what, in many parts of the city, any deep fried food must be eaten with that. And I'd forgotten it at home. So instead we ate them in grape leaves that the forager that I was interviewing had brought.
And the verdict?
You know what? It was mostly like crunchy exoskeleton, or crunchy breading. But once you got to that kind of, still juicy center, it was more asparagus-y and almost shrimpy.
I would think shrimpy would be a great way of thinking about it, especially with the shell and all that and kind of tender on the inside.
I mean, though lots of people are eating ones that have already developed their wings and have already redeveloped that shell. And there's more of an exoskeleton, crunch, but probably not that different of a flavor.
So you had the cicadas. Going to do it again, do you think? Maybe 17 years from now?
Yeah. Give me another 17 years. I do believe that the world has got to seek out and start embracing more sustainable sources of protein, and insects are a logical and sustainable one if we can get over the kind of the gross factor. But I mean, think about it. We eat crayfish, we eat shrimp, we eat lobsters, all in the arthropoda family. They're the sisters and brothers of cicadas. And, shrimp do look pretty scary if you really look at them. So, why can't we do this?
Yeah, I was thinking about this today when I knew I was going to talk to you, Monica, because I was thinking, I think it was all the way back in maybe middle school or at least high school. So this is going back over 40 years now, that there was talk, like in social studies class, oh, well, insects are going to be the new way to go for protein. It's going to solve the world hunger problem. And, insects are eaten in other parts of the world. In fact, they're pretty common, but I don't see, maybe I'm wrong, maybe we'll see in the future, but I just don't see Americans getting over this ick factor and embracing insects in a large way.
Yeah, if you can go by the comments on my Facebook page, I think you're absolutely right. A few years ago, when there was sort of a big push for this, a lot of companies had developed cricket flour applications where they were making baked goods, and that might be the sort of entry drug, the way that we can start to employ it, grinding it into a flour.
And have you, you're an adventurous eater. A lot of your work is with food. Have you eaten other insects?
Oh, for sure. A lot of crickets, a lot of grasshoppers when I go to Mexico. You can find them here. I'm not sure if they're legal to import, but there are certain places in Chicago where you can find them and drop them on, guacamole, because often they're fried. They're like stir fried, and then they'll put sort of a tahine, lemony, salty, spicy spice on them. I've eaten tarantulas, mostly for stories. A lot of mealworms, silkworms. Koreans eat a lot of silkworms, and you can buy them in a can in stores. So mealworms, silkworms, tarantulas, crickets, earthworms. I don't recommend them. They're very muddy tasting, and and the application I had was not deep fried. It was still pretty kind of like wet and slimy. So yeah, and those are the ones I have intentionally eaten. Of course, we all probably eat. They say like there are probably 6 bugs in the head of every asparagus tip.
Oh no!
But more protein. There you go.
So tarantulas. I just think of those hairy legs. How do tarantulas get prepared? I don't know that I've ever seen tarantulas be served.
So this was a wine pairing and insects. Very
wine
gimmicky.
Do you pair with
I think it was a Riesling. I can't remember what it was. I think it was a wine company that really wanted me to try their wines. And they said, we're doing a pairing with insects. And I said, okay, I'm there. And they did not want us to eat the bodies because they said, there's a segment of the population that can have an allergic reaction to the body of the tarantula. And it's kind of gushy, and they did not want to deal with, any lawsuits. So they just had us eat the legs, which were coated in a kind of a glaze and then fried and coated in a glaze. So those little like hairs weren't going to tickle your throat because both the frying and the glaze kind of tamped that down.
That's some good insect information, some good insect content today on Destination Eat Drink. But before I let you go, let's talk a little bit about Chicago, because of course I'm a Chicago guy from way back, and you've lived in Chicago most of your life. Anything new in Chicago that you're particularly excited about, either food or otherwise?
Well, we've got the James Beard Awards coming this weekend, so it's going to be party after party after party, celebrating Chicago food and chefs, and that's always fun because I get to see all my food writing friends. But we just got South Carolina Seaside Barbecue in Chicago, which I'd never had before. They brought burgoo, which is like also called Brunswick stew, which is traditionally made with squirrels. It's not going to be made with squirrels here, but also boiled peanuts, which is interesting because it's a South Carolinian thing, but it's also a Southern Chinese thing. So
I didn't know
that was dear to my heart. Yeah. A lot of people don't like them, but it's very, again, sustainable protein there. It's not great. Boiled peanuts. It's just sort of fun.
Yeah. We lived in Charleston for a little while and I wasn't a big fan. I mean, I think Stephen Colbert said, take everything you like about peanuts, the crunchiness, the crispiness, and get rid of that.
Take it away.
Take it away. So, but they flavor them in South Carolina too, not just salt. They have other flavors too, which can be,
that would make sense.
At least interesting, right?
Yeah. So I hadn't had something called hash and rice, which is another sort of South Carolinian thing. So that was fun. And cornbread biscuits with sorghum. So that's like one of the latest things I'm writing about. But it's just, it's also patio season in Chicago. And so I'm going to go watch a movie on a rooftop and eat tonight.
Oh, good.
And so we're just having a good time here, getting ready for the Democratic National Convention, hoping that everything stays calm. And
fingers crossed.
And yeah, for sure.
Food-wise, like produce, I'm wondering what kind of things do you look forward to now that summer's here in Chicago? I mean, I always loved going strawberry picking with my mom. She loved doing that. That was one summer thing that we liked to do. Anything summer-wise that you particularly enjoy as far as produce goes?
I love rhubarb and strawberry season, which are just intersecting now, because I love making strawberry rhubarb crumbles. And then I'll, freeze a lot of that filling so I can make it later in the year. I'm really looking forward to, I love the greens and spinach and arugula are out right now, but tomato season, I absolutely adore when, I've got a garden. And so right now I'm just eating a lot of fresh lettuce and spinach, and my kale is ready. But I'm kind of crazy because I love bitter melon, which is a Chinese vegetable. Actually, they eat it in India as well as the Philippines. And I just got my bitter melon plants to start climbing on the trellis that I planted them with. And it's a very acquired taste, but those who love it, love it. It's just, and it's true to its name. It's a vegetable that you stir fry and is very, very, very bitter, but very delicious.
What do you pair that with to maybe offset the bitterness a little bit? Or do you just stir fry it and there you go?
No, it's you always want to pair it with a very strongly flavored food. So usually like a nice fatty bit of pork or beef, and then put the fermented black beans in there that kind of amplify the salty and deep pungent flavors. But it's also in Vietnamese culture often made into an omelet that you eat with rice, but then you pair it with nuoc cham, which is, if you probably know, is fish sauce and lime and chili and garlic and a little bit of sugar. And so that balances the bitterness with all of those strong flavors. And sometimes I'll cook it with lapchong.
I had you on the show last year to talk about your book, Made in Chicago, which I love because it's right up my alley. It's talking about the unique dishes of Chicago and kind of the history and where you can get it and, how it's come into the culture. And I asked you last year, and you said maybe. And when I asked you if there was going to be a sequel to Made in Chicago, so I'm going to ask you again. Any movement on that? Or are you thinking about it, or what's your thought process here?
We are in our third printing, which I'm so pleased about.
Congratulations, that's great.
But we're still negotiating whether or not they want to kind of let us add a chapter or two. So it's doing well. The sales are doing great. But we're in talks right now and saying, we've come up with a few things that we think definitely should be added, including atomic cake and we think maybe carbonara made its debut here in Chicago. That's what the data seems to be telling us.
Oh, wow.
But we'd have to find who actually, I think it was probably invented in Italy, but the first time it was mentioned the United States was here. So we're gonna check out a few different leads.
And last thing, you mentioned some work that you're doing at Axois, what you're working on now. Any other forthcoming stories that you want to kind of clue me into?
Well, we're working on stories about this Foxtrot market that they closed down all 37 in one day in Chicago. We're trying to find out if maybe they're going to be revived. What else am I writing about? I just wrote about South Carolina barbecue. Oh, we're doing our favorite donuts in Chicago. And we're reviewing restaurants on the beach in Chicago. We just assumed that they were all just going to be horrible tourist traps, but some of them actually have really good food at good prices, which is not something you find much these days with food inflation. So we're going to be highlighting some of the best places to eat on the beach in Chicago. And a lot of people don't even think of Chicago as a beach town, but it is a beach town.
Right. So when you do your donut story, I can share with you my story of my very first job, 15 years old, worked at Dunkin' Donuts in Barrington, Illinois.
Nice.
And the time that I almost lit the kitchen on fire. So.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so there's that.
Was it an oil fire? Or
It was. I was tasked with cleaning out the fryolator. And, of course, the first thing you're supposed to do is turn off the fryolator before you drain the oil, which I did not do.
Oh, boy. And
so all the crumbs settled onto the hot coils and ignited. And in a panic, I hit the fire extinguisher thing, which sent down this huge snowstorm of anti-fire, fire suppression stuff. Wow. And it took me 12 hours to clean the kitchen. So.
Holy moly. Were you able to keep your job?
I don't know why he kept me. Probably because I was getting paid $2 an hour in 1978.
Wow.
So there you go.
Wow. So that's a great story.
Yeah. Well, Monica Eng from Axois, thank you so much for sharing your cicada stories with us today. Been very entertaining. And thanks for being on the show. It's always great to catch up with you.
Thank you, Brent. Take care.
Okay. There goes Monica Eng. You can read her excellent works at Axios.com. I've also got a link to her book, Made in Chicago, in the show notes. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, we're in Bologna, Italy, one of the greatest underrated cities in Italy. We'll learn about Venus's belly button and a dish with 4 names, so don't miss that. Until then, you can scratch your food and travel itch at destinationeatdrink.com. I just posted a new story about the best pastries in Guimarães, Portugal, including a crispy one named after the city. You can read that at destinationeatdrink.com/blog. There's also a brand new video out. I'm sampling some amazing tapas in Logroño, Spain. You might not have ever heard of that city, but it has 2 of the great foodie streets in the whole country. It was a great trip, and you can see that video by clicking on the video tab at destinationeatdrink.com or by going to my YouTube channel at Destination Eat Drink 946. Destination Eat Drink is distributed by the Radio Misfits Podcast Network and Ed Silla. Thanks, Ed. I'm Brent Peterson. See you down the road.
Join us next week for another culinary adventure on Destination Eat Drink, a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.